With respect to an issue I think might be either above my head, or I am either on the right path or I am obviously missing something. So I'm just going to share my perspective with respect to this. So as we all age, I mean, we look for meaning in life, right? So with respect to me, I realized quite a bit of time ago that there's way more going on and things are quite complicated. So I'm going to sort of wait and see with respect to any sort of commitments in terms of religions or spiritual understandings without truly gaining a perspective for all of them. So my spiritual journey started with a simple, sort of question, because I understood from reading various people and their perspectives in terms of the importance of understanding oneself, right? Then my dad, out of the blue, basically said, we can be our own enemies, right? So I connected something that I read, which was Sun Tzu, who said, "Know thy enemy as you know thyself," which was reinforced by a couple of different things until I came across the saying by Jesus, which was, "The kingdom of heaven is within. Seek and you shall find." And immediately my realization was, wait a second, that's introspective analysis. That's the same who am I questions the Eastern traditions are asking people to engage in, like Buddha and others, including the Vedic perspective from, in terms of self-inquiry and self-actualization. So I put it all together in a certain way and went on a journey of discovery, and along the way found out that evolutionary theory does have a merit. So I was wondering whether my understanding and how it helped me alleviate a certain sort of disturbance or turbulence in our system about a certain form of existential angst or social anxiety in some way, in terms of trying to fit in and trying to figure out, wait, is that really required, or can I just follow my path, and if people like me, they can come my way? If not, that's fine. Or do I have to actively try to fit in some version of me that I'd have to sort of wear a specific mask for to truly fit into? And I realized quite a bit of time ago, from my perspective anyway, and that's not something that I wanted to do. I just wanted to follow my own path in terms of discovery. And I'll still hold off on all the religious expressions in terms of what they're trying to teach, and went on a journey of inquiry to understand. And what helped me, I don't know whether this is going to help others, but maybe some experts or psychologists or psychiatrists can provide a little bit of clarity, or some variations of counselors and spiritual gurus and priests and rabbis and priests from Hinduism and so forth, in terms of their perspectives, if they like. So from a systems perspective, when we begin to analyze ourselves, we realize that we are one of very many on the planet. So right now there's 8.5 billion people. And what connects us all is the tree of life, is that we're all on the same branch of humanity, with minor differences in terms of our genetics. And all of that occurred on planet Earth. So we're technically all Earthlings and we have one planet, is a realization that you come to relatively quick along this way. And when you look at it in terms of systems and divisions, in terms of, conflicts that we experience, whether it's religious conflicts, and in terms of our ability to understand what our pastors and our gurus are saying, opposed to, sort of going on that discovery unguided while discovering a lot of different perspectives, where those perspectives become your guide in your ability to navigate in terms of the self-discovery. So this is where it's very important to establish some foundational understandings. And one of them that we need to truly understand to progress through self-discovery is the relationship between perspective and perception, and the feedback loop that reinforces itself, and our ability to objectively, with forethought, maintain an agnostic position in terms of not having enough information. So we're waiting to form conclusions instead of actually sort of forming solid or solidifying or absolute type of conclusions. That's very important, I think, and it's very important to sort of understand the logical fallacies sometimes and the psychological pitfalls that we fall into in terms of sort of negating our ability to adapt or be as adaptable with respect to what kind of um, you know futures that might emerge on our path based on choices that we've made or we make or we consciously make to ensure that we live within a certain way. So that's very important. So I choose to maintain a agnostic perspective. So for me, the kingdom of heaven is within. Seek and you shall find expression by Jesus that's been slightly modified over the last several iterations of the Bible that's come out, yet it's more in line with his expressions in other languages with respect to that statement being important, and all the debate in the Christian circles with respect to that, and arriving at various different conclusions in terms of whether we are part of nature, being of nature, playing a role in our understanding, while we are to have dominion over nature according to Christian theology and the Abrahamic variations of trusteeship, sort of leading the way from the Christian perspectives or the Abrahamic perspectives, unlike the Eastern ones, which include us on the tree of life, including the naturalist perspectives and the scientific variations. So from a systems perspective, then we realize that every moment, where it's basically a wave, right? The past and the future hasn't actualized yet, so that leading front is basically a wave that we're riding into the future, right? So each point on that wave for each of us every day is a series of moments that could be divided into decisions that we're making in terms of how things happen. Sometimes as parents, we make decisions for our kids. Sometimes as kids, those decisions are made for us by parents and priests and rabbis and various forms of clergy of various religious types, and of course your neighbors in some cases and your extended family, all guiding the way in us being shaped in a certain way. Now we also begin to understand through psychological understandings that our perceptions are shaped quite a bit by our perspectives, which are sort of foundational in the way we derive meaning, and how important understanding the perception perspective feedback loop was in sort of fitting all of it in a certain way that makes the understanding of introspective analysis from a systems perspective in an evolutionary way, I think highlights a lot of what the current human condition is from at least a theoretical understanding, so that we can better look at our individual experiences and realize that a lot of it was out of our hands, and the only things that we have control over are our thoughts and our words and our actions. And in order for us to truly put that together with introspective analysis and emotional security and intelligence, while our intuitions are in check and are functioning as a checks and balance in terms of our actions, which are controlled by our conscience, and ultimately our total consciousness is experiencing or expanding in a certain way because of that direction. At least that's what I feel with respect to the journey that I took, and I wonder whether this type of analysis or expression has any sort of validity or value for any others. Now, with respect to Hinduism, it was actually the Vedic and the Upanishads in terms of their deviations in understanding in slight bits, but the overall understanding that we're all versions of the universe evolved to know and experience itself. Yet, our own unique versions are equally valid to everybody else because everything is being experienced simultaneously by this universal consciousness. Is the ultimate essence, the essential message of the Vedas, reinforced by the concept of Brahman that they introduced in terms of the all-pervasive consciousness that set things forth in a first cause type of principle, opposed to a theistic type of deity, which is quite different. So, see, the Mula Mantra in um, was quite helpful in sort of breaking it down and understanding the nuances from Sanskrit to English, and opposed to how it's received in Tamil. So it was all quite um, interesting. So this journey I find was it's I'm still on it. I'm just trying to figure it out. But I'm just wondering whether, as Hindu priests or Christian theologists, or even Abrahamic or people who are technically immersed in that type of understanding from as an average person like me, I wonder whether what you guys think about this, and those who search for spirituality like me from a secular perspective, using scientific understandings to gain a complete perspective. I wonder what you guys think. So the reason I offer this is because I want to understand exactly, sort of take stock of my journey from all of your perspectives. And the reason I say perspectives specifically is because it's sort of an all-encompassing aspect of our psychology. And just saying a point of view, or other words to try to describe it, might lessen the sort of totality of the concept of of perspectives. So it's to gain sort of a measure of where I am right now in terms of my journey, and whether it's validated by some, or if there are any sort of criticism, and of course to find out if anyone finds value in my content, and the way I am looking at certain aspects of our reality that's common to us.